Professional log. Veetskal, stretcher runner righalt, Switsker 9 Righalter Swevash, Gamma Sector Day 19, Post 14th Bell. The face in the bucket is not a reflection. I set that down first because the rest of this will not make sense without it. And I need the rest to make sense because I have been on this rig 20 years, and I do not want to be the man who writes something he cannot explain without first establishing that he knows exactly what a reflection looks like. I know how the shaft water sits, still and grey brine, condensed out of the atmosphere by the draw vents 200 meters below, tasting of iron when you draw it in the low bells, and of nothing at all when the chill runs deep. I know the shape of my own jaw on it. I know the dull gleam the augmetic throws when I lean too close over the lip. I know all of this. The face in the bucket was not mine. 14th bell. I had come off a long pull, pilgrim woman, crushed ankle, trench 4, where the grating gave over a compression bolt that has been working loose for a week and which I still have not formally lobbed and should. I drew water at Gamma 3 because it was nearest. The station itself is unremarkable, hatch plate in the deck, iron ringed, the crank arm worn smooth on the grip where 20 years of hands have worked it. The rope 3-ply and dark with use. The bucket, a standard draw gouge enamel with a hairline crack along the base seam I have been noting for 2 seasons. The shaft hatch was unlocked when I arrived, which I registered but did not log, because the lower bay attendants sometimes draw early when the pilgrim queue backs up before the confessor warden's morning blessing, and there is nothing unusual in it. I turned the crank. The rope ran down in the dark. There was a sound before the bucket seated. I have been trying to fix the exact quality of it since I walked away from the station. Not the mechanical complaint of the crank arm. Not the rope's usual friction creak through the iron eyelet at the shaft lip. 3 separate tensions in the rope itself, taut, a pause that had weight to it, and then slack all at once, and then taut again, as though something below had released its hold. I told myself the draw level had dropped. I told myself the rope had caught on the shaft lining. I drew it up. The water smelled of brine. Exactly of brine, nothing added. The smell is important. I am noting it because the smell was completely ordinary, and that is why I bent to check the draw volume before I looked into the surface. The habit of 20 years, and the face was already there when I looked, pressed flat against the inner curve of the water. That is the only way I can put it. Not floating, not suspended in the column, pressed, the way a palm flattens against a pane of glass, the way something on the far side of a membrane makes itself known by the distortion it causes. The features were distinct, masculine, I believe, though the pressure flattening made it difficult to be certain. The mouth was closed. The eyes were open and did not track when I leaned back from the bucket. I dropped the bucket. I let the rope run through my right hand, and there was nothing on the augmetic, because there is never anything on the augmetic. It is iron and it does not feel, and I heard the bucket strike the shaft wall somewhere below and the rope went slack. For a moment I stood with both hands at my sides in the condensate wet of the station, and the compressors thudded through the deck plates without pause. The same as they have thudded every day I have been on this rig. And from the lower transit bays the pilgrim smell rose up through the floor grating beast musk and unwashed wool. The sound of someone murmuring what might have been a prayer or might have been grief. All of it ordinary. All of it identical to any other 14th bell. Then I hauled the bucket back up. The face was still there. Still pressed. Still facing upward into nothing I could name. I have drawn water at Gamma 3 for 11 years of the 20 I have been on this rig. I have drawn it in low light, in post-exercise steam flush. In the deep cold bells when nitrogen ice distortion breaks a water surface into white fractures and multiplies whatever reflects there until it makes no sense. I know what a bacterial bloom reads in condensate well draw water. I know the smell of organic contamination and the gray-green shimmer that precedes it. I know these things. I have lobbed both in the past decade. This was neither. I closed the hatch. I did not report it tonight. I told myself I needed to consult the station log first to determine whether any other draw had been recorded from Gamma 3 today and whether anyone else had written anything down. But the truth is I needed to be certain before I put my name beside something I could not classify. A stretcher runner does not sign his name to something he cannot prove. I do not yet know whose face it was. Document type, internal administrative memorandum, classification, operational, infrastructure, provenance, Office of the Overseer Tertius Bramchelk, Platform 3, Righalt Suvash. Counter-authorized under the seal of the Office of the Confessor Warden Ilza Drav, same platform. Recovered day 45 from the Overseer Tertius's locked dispatch cabinet by rig security on instruction from Platform Commandant Heskati. Date stamp. Day 44. Current transit season. Physical Winter Siren. Single folio rig issue carbon paper stock, standard administrative format. Condensate damage to the upper right corner has rendered 3 characters in the addressee block irrecoverable. No further content is believed lost. The counter-signature field has been worked over with unusual force. The paper shows 2 perforations, both mended on the reverse with hull tape prior to the document's dispatch. The pen pressure of the 3-line litany has transferred mirror reversed through the paper. The reverse reads as impression rather than ink. The cataloging technician's recovery note states that the folio carried the standard brine smell of Platform 3 atmospheric stock and one other smell she declined to name. The Confessor Warden's retained copy has not been located. Memorandum for Comprashdite Compliance C2. All section supervisors, Platform 3, Senior Marshal of Rig Security, Platforms 2, 3, and 4. Lead Condensate Technician, Platform 3. AR Reseverable, 3 characters, Allocation Desk, Platforms 3 and 5 from Office of the Overseer Tertius Bramchelk. Righalt Suvash in consultation with Office of the Confessor Warden Ilzdrav. Righalt Suvash Re. Well Station Gamma 3, Platform 3. Permanent Operational Status Change 1. Well Station Gamma 3 is hereby designated closed and sealed, effective 2nd bell, day 44, current transit season. The rope and bucket assembly, draw frame, pulley mount, and all associated rigging currently installed at Gamma 3 are to be dismantled and destroyed. No components are to be retained or reallocated. The shaft access plate is to be welded shut. The weld is to be certified by a 2nd technician and the certification lodged with this office before the close of day 44. 4. All condensate output logs and maintenance records pertaining to Gamma 3 are to be transferred under seal to the Office of the Confessor Warden, not later than 1st bell, day 45. 5. Personnel access to the Gamma 3 installation bay and the adjacent maintenance trench, designation MT9C, is prohibited from the moment of this memorandum's distribution. Pilgrim groups and non-rig personnel are to be barred from the Gamma 3 installation bay and from MT9C. Any individual found within either area is to be detained and presented to the Confessor Warden personally. 7. This order supersedes all prior condensate draw scheduling, active work orders, and water allocation assignments for Platform 3. Reassignment of draw duties to Gamma 5 and Gamma 7 is authorized at the lead condensate technician's discretion. 8. Compliance is not optional. All VRC Tafters Bram Calc Platform 3, Rig Halt Suvash, Chelks Pressed Rig Seal, Day 44, Counter-Scounter Scountecher and Spiritual Authority. Transcript and Noti. The counter-signature field contains 3 lines of written text. The first 2 are cancelled. Details below. The third is uncancelled. All 3 are in the Confessor Warden's recognizable small hand, though the letter spacing tightens markedly across the progression, as though the space available were perceived to be contracting, cast, cancelled by a single deep horizontal stroke that perforates the paper at its midpoint. The clause does not complete, by the grace of the God Emperor of mankind and in the authority of his church. This place is sealed against what enters through. Second line, cancelled by 2 strokes, both scored into the paper rather than laid across its surface. Text recoverable under examination, in the name of Saint Name High Gothic, untranslated here, and by the authority vested in his servants. The water of this shaft is condemned and its voice is The second cancellation stroke overruns its line and scores through the opening word of the third entry. Third line. Uncancelled. The seal holds while the seal holds. Tarns Ripton Noti. 6 characters follow the third line in the Confessor Warden's hand, pressed harder into the paper than any text above them. They have not been cancelled. They do not match any ward litany formula in the registered Suvash breviaries or any liturgical High Gothic notation identified by the examining administrator. They are reproduced in this collection by facsimile only. The transcriptionist declines to render them in standard characters and has entered this declination in the recovery log without further explanation. Confessor Warden Eilstrafsword. Righout Suvash. Dravs Ministorum Seal. 3 impressions. Standard practice requires 1. No explanation for the additional impressions appears in any accompanying document. Terence Ripson note. No reason for the permanent sealing of Well Station Gamma 3 is stated in this memorandum or in any document found alongside it. The condensate records specified under Item 4 have not been located in the Confessor Warden's office, the Overseer Tertius's filing archive, or any other Platform 3 file store. The Confessor Warden's breviary contains no entry for Day 44. A recorded correspondence begins on Day 27 and ends on Day 43. 4 pilgrim transit groups held Platform 3 resupply berths on Day 44. Their onward entries in the pilgrim roll are incomplete. Intercepted, Pilgrim Korenskorensos, Righald Suvash, outbound postal transit, bundle ref, number not legible, provenance address, not recoverable, provenance address, not recoverable. Lower quarter of page absent. Date stamp. None surviving on fragment. Archival notation. Paper moisture compromised throughout. Surface stiff with hull condensate. Text in lower sections fused to adjacent material in bundle. Recovered by archival separation. Partial loss on affected sections. Letter begins. Salutation absent or on missing portion. The crossing ran 4 days past the factor's estimate. I do not know whether my last letter reached you before this one does, or whether the secondary way station routing swallowed it entire. And I have made my peace with letters as things that leave the hand and arrive somewhere approximate. You should make the same peace. The correspondence discipline you maintain would not survive this corridor. But we have made the halt. I am writing from the bunk tier in Transit Bay 2. The first thing to know is that it is wet. Not damp, wet continuously, as though the platform breathes through its iron skin and what comes out is brine. Every surface holds a film of it, the deck plates and the bulkheads and the bunk frame, and now this page, which has taken on weight since I started it. The condensate comes from the hull itself. They collect it through shafts sunk vertically through the platform body, and that is how all the water here is made. I did not know this before arriving. I am not certain it changes anything to know it now. You smell the halt before the docking collar cycles open. Brine first, mineral cold, the iron oxide of the hull skin beneath it, and below both a third note I cannot name. Something that has been breathed in and out by this platform for longer than anyone living can account for. The transit manifest calls it atmospheric condensate processed. That describes the smell the way a supply requisition describes a face. The compressors do not stop. I say this not as complaint, but as information I would have valued before I arrived. They do not register first a sound. The thrum comes up through the deck plates and into the soles, and you carry it as a low, steady fatigue before you understand where it is coming from. By the second evening, I had not slept and could not name why. An older pilgrim, she has made this corridor before and wears the experience in her posture, in the way she does not look up when sounds change, showed me. Press your palm flat to the bulkhead and feel the rhythm of it. I did. Knowing what it was did not stop it. The body accepts the thrum the way the body accepts cold, not with resignation, exactly, but with the recognition that it will not be waited out. The confessor warden performed the transit blessing for our cohort this morning. Her name is Drav. The transit authority materials list her rank as confessor warden. I would list her voice as cold and exact. The way a measurement is exact, not warm, not cold toward us specifically, simply calibrated to a function and applied without surplus. She said exactly as many words as the rite requires. She marked each pilgrim's transit book with the Hall's press seal and did not meet eyes during the marking. I have been told these frontier ministorum postings tend toward those who are better suited to places with fewer observers. I do not say she is unsuited. I say the blessing felt like a transaction completed and filed rather than a grace received. And when she pressed the seal to my transit book, there was no sense of anything passing from her hand to mine. Perhaps this is how it is done in the pilgrim corridors. I have not made this transit before and have nothing to compare it to. After the blessing we were sent to draw water from the condensate stations. The wells here are the old kind, rope and bucket, the shaft sunk through the hull plating, the mechanism said to be unchanged since the rig's founding, which I take as either pride or an admission that no one has thought to question it. You lower the bucket yourself. You wait, listening to the rope pay out. You pull. There is a sound the rope makes in the shaft before the bucket clears the lip. 3 beats, taut, then slack, then taut again. A brief interval between each one. I noticed it on the first draw and set it aside, and noticed it again on the second and set it aside again. And on the third draw, I stopped mid-pull and stood there listening, and counted the beats, and could not account for why a taut rope would go slack and return to tension before the load had changed. The woman beside me said she had not heard anything, and walked to the other station before I could ask her to stay and listen. But it is there. 3 beats, like a throat cleared before speech, and then the bucket comes up cold and the water tastes of brine and iron, and that is all there is to it. I have drawn twice from Gamma 5. The water is fine. I have not yet drawn from Gamma 3, which is the nearest station to our bunk to Tier. The queue was long this morning, and I went to Gamma 5 instead. This evening, before the Tier bell, I am going back down the trench passage because it is a shorter walk and I am tired and there is no reason not to. And I thought I would tell you first that I am going down to draw from the well maintenance and operations log Rig Holt Suviwash. Platform 7 Water Processing and Condensate Management Division Overseer Tertius Brown Chelk, Division Authority Days 17 through 20, Transit Cycle Current, Archivist's Notation. Inserted at time of collation, entries reproduced in the order in which they appear in the surviving volume. Chelk's handwriting throughout the preceding 18 days of the log is characteristic. Broad letterforms, a consistent forward lean, each line pressed close to the right margin. Pages are filled. The day 19 entry occupies the left margin only, letters compressed and close. Each word ending before the next begins, as though the writer were measuring how much space he was permitted to take. The day 20 entry is included for comparison of hand. Day 17. Shaft inspection complete, Gamma 1 through Gamma 7 inclusive. All yield within atmospheric condensate tolerances. Rope and bucket assemblies in good order across all stations. Bucket interior surfaces showing standard mineral deposit consistent with atmospheric brine particulate in solution. Scheduled for treatment at the next maintenance cycle. Pilgrim draw load this watch, 23 requisitions fulfilled. Platform condensate reserve at 58% capacity. No anomalies. No incidents. Closing, Overseer Tertius B. Chelk, countersigned. Day 18. Gamma 3. Rope wear noted at the third loop knot, flagged for replacement ahead of next full load draw cycle. Mechanism otherwise within tolerance. Yield standard. Water sampled, brine sent with slight iron salt overlay, consistent with Gamma series atmospheric draw. Taste within tolerance. No particulate. No color deviation. No anomalies. Closing, Overseer Tertius B. Chelk, countersigned. Archivist notation, the day 19 entry begins approximately 4 centimeters below where the day 18 entry ends. The gap is not annotated. Day 19. 14th bell. Gamma 3. Visual anomaly in condensate output observed during draw. Anomaly, optical disturbance at water surface. Possible origin, bacterial bloom in upper shaft column, nitrogenized formation producing refraction or visual scatter in draw column. No physical contamination detected on examination. Water clear. Smell, brine, standard. Taste, no entry. Bucket interior, no damage, no internal fouling, no residue inconsistent with standard draw water contact. No discoloration. No particulate. No odor variation. Anomaly present on first draw. Anomaly present on second draw. Anomaly absent on third draw. Anomaly absent on fourth draw. Classification optical phenomenon, condensate source, non-critical. Logged for record. No further action required at this time. No archivist's notation. The closing notation, name, rank, countersignature does not appear at the foot of this entry. Division protocol for anomaly classification entries requires the co-signature of a second-rated officer present during verification. No second officer's name appears. The duty roster for the 14th bell of day 19 places one officer in Water Processing Division, Chelk, alone. Archivist's notation: Chelk's day 18 entry records taste sampling as a matter of course. His day 19 entry contains a taste line, written in the same position on the page, in the same sequence within the inspection list. It does not record a sample. The field is blank. The surrounding words: no damage, no fouling, no residue, no discoloration, no particulate, no odor variation, continue without interruption on either side. The blank sits in the middle of the list as though the list itself did not notice. Archivist's notation: Chelk does not record the interval between the second draw and the third. He records 4 draws total. He records that the anomaly was present on 2 and absent on 2. He does not record how long he stood at the shaft lip between the second observation and the third attempt, nor where he stood, nor how far back. He records only that, on the third draw, the anomaly was absent. Archivist's notation: the day 18 entry flags rope wear at the third loop knot of Gamma 3's mechanism. Wear at a loop knot produces a characteristic draw sound. Tension shifts from the knot's upper face to the lower as rope pays out, then draws tight again as the bucket rises. 3 distinct pulses. This is standard to all Gamma Series rope and bucket assemblies. Chelk does not mention the sound in his day 19 entry. Day 20. Condensate yield all platforms, all stations, standard. Routine inspection complete. No anomalies. No incidents. Closing. Overseer Tertius B. Chelk, countersigned. Nastiavist's notation: full column width. Hand large and forward slanting. Gamma 3 is not mentioned. The anomaly classified the previous day is not mentioned. The Pilgrim draw load, recorded without exception in every preceding entry for 14 days, is not mentioned. Day 19 is not referenced by any subsequent entry until day 23, and that entry states only that organic trace matter inconsistent with atmospheric condensate source has been detected at Gamma 3. By day 23, the handwriting is small again. Personal log, Cial, V, Stretcher Runner, Maintenance Squad, Rig Halt SD Vash, day 21. 14th C Vash, day 21. 14th Bell watch to 15th Bell, went back to Gamma 3. I told myself I was checking the draw time on the secondary condensate run, which is in my remit and requires no explanation. I had the log sheet. I wrote the draw time down. It was a normal draw time. The creak came before the bucket cleared the shaft. 3 beats, taut, slack, taut. The rope had no reason to sound like that. The bucket was still 12 feet below the lip. I could hear the weight of it. The slosh of drawn water, but the creak came anyway, dry and deliberate, like the sound of something settling its grip. Then the bucket cleared the lip. The face was moving. On day 19, the face was still. A man pressed flat against the inside curve of the bucket water, the way a palm presses glass from the wrong side, features undistorted. I could not have said which man. This time I could not avoid knowing there was intention to it. The mouth was working. Opening and closing in shapes I could not immediately read, the way a mouth shapes words seen through a porthole with the sound stripped by iron and distance. I set the bucket down on the shaft lip and I watched. I have 20 years in this corridor. High Gothic for the blessing responses and confession litanies. 6 or 7 Pilgrim dialects I manage well enough to ask someone where it hurts and whether they can bear weight. The trade shorthand rig workers use for things the overseer Tertius isn't meant to hear. I know what a mouth looks like making those sounds. None of them matched. The shapes were slow, deliberate. I counted 12 distinct forms before the face stilled and the water in the bucket went flat, and I was looking at brine and the reflection of the shaft housing above me. I set the oilskin flat on the shaft lip and wrote what I had seen. I have no formal notation for mouth shapes, so I used the closest letters I could find and annotated where the letters failed. A closed bilabial, lips pressed together, then released, I have written as BHH. A shape involving the tongue tip I had no symbol for at all. I have drawn it as a struck through O with a second mark beneath. One shape I have written as Solon because that was the closest available rendering, but I am aware that is a name and that it may be contaminating my record. I have marked it with a query. The full sequence, as transcribed: BHH, BLV, struck O squared, Solon, AEH. The shape I have called the back vowel, struck O squared again, less X lever, a fourth form for which I have no character and have diagrammed at the margin /X VL/X EEH BHH. 12 shapes. They do not make a word in any tongue. I have served 20 years in this corridor. I am aware that I may be missing something fundamental about the grammar. I am also aware that I have written the sequence twice now, and the shapes are not changing. I noticed the dust after I closed the oilskin. The shaft lip runs 12 inches of flat compressed iron before the housing drops away. There should be condensate scale and nothing else. I have drawn from this well for 6 years, and the shaft lip does not accumulate loose particulate. The compressor drawer keeps it scoured. This time, there was a streak through the scale. 3 inches long, maybe 4. Starting at the inner lip and running outward, as though something had dragged itself toward the rim. I measured it with my thumb. The old metic one, because if there was transfer, I did not want it on skin. The iron did not register anything unusual. That is either reassuring or it is not. I have noted in this entry that I will file the anomaly with Overseer Tertius Chelk under the heading of condensate irregularity. This is the correct administrative channel, and Chelk's record carries more authority than mine. I know he was at Gamma 3 on the 19th. His entry sits in the maintenance ledger, and his boot prints were still in the scale dust when I arrived. He came. He measured. He wrote bacterial bloom or nitrogenized distortion in the draw water. He did not write the word face. I understand the impulse. I have been trying to write a different word for 2 days, and this is the closest I have come to naming it correctly. I am filing with Chelk in the morning. I expect he will find the correct administrative language. He is good at that. The streak in the dust was the width of a finger, not a rig worker's finger. Narrower than that. Maintenance log. Overseer Ters Bramchik, Platform 4 Gamma, Rig Halt Suvash, Cycle 17 Recovered Fragment, Days 20 to 31 Source, Physical Volume, Evidence Intake, Provenance Chain Confirmed Unbroken Day 20. Condensate draw, all stations, nominal. Platform 4 Gamma Compressor, array C7 through C14 within established tolerance. C9 showing minor vibration offset, flagged for next maintenance rotation, non-urgent. Pilgrim transit flow, 23 souls processed through Lower Bay Holding, 4 held pending Confessor Warden documentation review, resolution projected, Day 21 Morning Bell. Gamma 3 rope and bucket assembly inspected per standing protocol, no mechanical fault identified. Water allocations distributed to Corridor 4 Pilgrim Quarters and Station Woods 1 through 7. Quantities logged to the dram, receipts countersigned. No anomalies logged. Day 21. No entry. Day 22. No entry. Cross-reference included for context. Internal platform memo. Platform 4 Gamma General Administration. Day 22. Morning bell. Signatory, Overseer Tertius B. Chelk. Subject, extended condensate draw window authorized for Lower Pilgrim Quarters, effective day 22 through day 25. The memo is 8 lines, its subject and language unremarkable. Chelk's signature sits at the base in his standard forward slanting hand. He was present on day 22. He signed administrative documents on day 22. He did not enter his maintenance log. The 2-day gap is a choice, not an absence. Day 23. Gamma 3 condensate output shows trace organic matter inconsistent with atmospheric condensate source. Recommend further analysis. Physical note on the day 23 entry. This notation occupies 4 lines of page 43 of the original volume. All prior entries in this log are written in Chelk's characteristic hand. Broad, forward slanting letters, well-spaced characters, text running to the full width of the ruled field. The day 23 entry departs from this in every particular. The characters are compressed horizontally, each letter occupying less than half its standard lateral width. The text runs against the left binding margin and does not reach past the midpoint of the page. Ink saturation is normal. Nib pressure is normal. This is not tremor, not failing light, not uncertainty about the words. The compression is deliberate, a man writing in as little horizontal space as a ruled page permits, as though hoping to keep the entry narrow enough to pass unnoticed, or to fit it beneath some threshold of legibility he cannot name. Physical note on pages 44 through 49, these pages are absent. The cuts are flush against the binding rod, a blade drawn flat 6 times, each cut running from head to foot without deviation. The stubs remaining are between 3 and 5 millimeters wide. The third stub carries a mark along its uppermost edge, not ink, not mechanical scoring from the blade. Pressure consistent with a fingernail or with the iron hook end of the rope ratchet tool used at the condensate well assemblies. The pressure is not uniform, heavy at the left margin, releasing toward center, catching again to the right. Taut, slack, taut. A does not form a letter. The volume's outer edge page stamps, applied quarterly when the volume is bound and sealed, run from page 40 through page 53 without interruption. Either the stamps were pressed after pages 44 through 49 were removed, or the pages were removed and the volume subsequently restamped. Chelk is listed as sole operator of the platform administrative seal press for cycle 17. Continuation. Same volume. Days 30 and 31. Day 30. Condensate wells all stations, nominal. Compressor arrays, nominal. Pilgrim transit flow, 11 souls, lower bays. Water allocations distributed. No anomalies logged. Day 31. Condensate wells, nominal. Compressors, nominal. 8 souls, lower transit bay. No anomalies logged. Note on the above entries, Chelk standard practice is to name stations individually, specify compressor array segments by designation, record pilgrim hold numbers, and log water allocation quantities to the drum. Days 30 and 31 contain none of these. They establish that entries were made. They do not record operations. Note on Gamma 3. The station does not appear in any entry after day 23. Platform standing order requires it to appear in every daily distribution summary. It is the sole condensate source for the Corridor 4 Pilgrim Quarters. Cross-referenced against Confessor Warden Drav's transit records, 31 souls occupied Corridor 4 on day 30, awaiting onward clearance. Their water is unattributed in any surviving document from this period. Note on further analysis, no continuation of the day 23 recommendation appears in any subsequent document. No referral memo. No technical consultation. No communication from Chelk to any rig authority between day 23 and day 43. The recommendation was written and the log ended. 6 pages followed it and are gone. The stubs were left. A man careful enough to cut 6 pages cleanly from a bound volume is careful enough to cut the stubs. Chelk did not. They remain where anyone who opened the volume would find them at once. He left them, which means either he could not bring himself to touch the binding again, or he left them as the one record he could still make, the shape of what he had seen in the negative. Where a record had been and was no longer, cross-reference, Confessor Warden Drav's Pilgrim Transit Register, entry sequence, days 16 through 23. The 4 souls held pending clearance on day 20, named in Chelk's day 20 entry, are recorded by name in that register. One entry in the register for this period cannot be reconciled within a single document. Fragment, Pilgrim and quote, a tregment while, Griginster of Register Halt, CV Ash. Office of the Confessor Warden Provenance, found in possession of Veth Cole, Trench Runner 2nd grade, surrendered to administrative inventory, day 44, date stamp, undated. Fragment separated from binding, full register not recovered. Condition, upper tier ragged, consistent with manual separation from binding. Lower edge blade cut. Condensate water staining heaviest at lower left corner, wicking lateral across 3 columns. Marginal annotations in minimum 2 hands, a third possible in the lower margin. The column headings are printed, pressed into the page at the time of the register's initial binding. Name, Originen. Transit Aces Sigienman. Arrival, Departure or Death, Seal. The register dates to the rig's 3rd decade of operation. The heading ink is older than any living administrator on Savash by 20 years at minimum, fixed dark against the fiber, untouched by the condensate damp that has browned the entries beneath it. Every Confessor Warden since the founding has continued the same book. Drav's entries contract toward the column center and leave the margins almost clear. Her predecessor wrote large, the habit of a man who did not doubt his jurisdiction. Drav's handwriting does not take that liberty. Until the annotations on this fragment, her margins are blank. The entries immediately above and below the target row are unremarkable. Pilgrim names, origin designations, lock assignments in standard numeral notation, departure dates proceeding in sequence, seals, pressed neat. The row directly above masts carries a departure date of day 15. The row directly below day 16 also. A normal day on the halt. Many departed. Mast, Solon. Origin, Kellevar Drift, Suvash Corridor. Transit Lock 7. Arrival, column water damaged, date illegible, ink fully lifted in a lateral band consistent with condensate wicking from the lower left corner. Date cannot be recovered. Departure, day 16. 1 seal. Iron red wax. Intact. Drav's oval, pressed centered and level, the characteristic unhurried press of a routine certification. The word departure has been worked over. not the single administrative cancellation stroke draw uses elsewhere on the fragment. Those are clean, horizontal, done in a single pass. These strokes are short, overlapping. The pen returned to the same patch 3 or 4 times. The underlying word is fully legible beneath them. The overwriter was not concealing it. They were returning to it, pressing back against the edge of something. The strokes do not read as correction. They read as reluctance. Beneath the strokes, in a hand that is not Drav's, deceased. The D is formed in the continental manner, the upper loop closed. Drav's opens at the top. All her forms across the fragment are consistent. The secondary notations D is a different formation, learned differently. The ink is lighter in shade, suggesting a different pen or a later session, though the condensate damp has browned both to similar degrees. The letters sit compressed on the line, smaller than the entry above them, as though the writer was uncertain of the space they were entitled to occupy. Below deceased, day 22. A second seal. Iron red. Drav's oval. The wax spread at the edges, pushed further into the page fiber than the first sealing. She applied more force to the second than to any other seal on the fragment. Both entries carry her mark. Right margin, Drav's hand, confirmed by comparison with surviving breviary entries. I sealed the departure on day 16. He was before me. I recorded the moment of presence. I have never reconstructed from memory or notation. He stood at the blessing table, and I placed oil on his brow in the departure rite, following the 7th collect as prescribed. And I pressed the seal, and he walked to transit lock 7. The seal documents what occurred. The compressor crew summoned me to the lower galleries on day 22. I sealed the record of death. I have sealed deaths before. The seal documents what occurred. I have examined both entries. I cannot locate the error. Both seals are mine. I pressed them both in the presence of the subject. I am not capable of pressing a seal in absence. This is the first principle of the certification. Below, same hand, strokes less regular, a later session or a different state of the hand. The departure oil was still on the skin when they found him. 6 days in the lower galleries. The condensate there takes oil from skin within the hour. It strips everything. I have seen it on the dead before, the damp taking even what the right put there. 6 days and it should have been gone. On the way down to the galleries I passed the maintenance trench adjacent to well station Gamma 3. The rope was moving. 3 beats, taut, slack, taut. The winch stood unmanned. I do not know how to record this. I am writing it here because the register has no column for it and I cannot leave it unwritten. Lower margin, Veth Call's hand. Identified by comparison with personal log entries, departure, day 16. Face in Gamma 3, day 19. Body found, day 22. Middle of 6 days. If the departure entry is true, something else was found in the galleries. If the discovery entry is true, something else went through transit lock 7 with oil still on its brow. I have 12 shapes in the oilskin since the 21st. 3 weeks unshown. I am going to find the confessor warden. I am going to put them in front of her and watch her face. She sealed both entries. She has given both her mark. I want to know which one she believes is real. I think she already knows neither answer is the one she sealed. Peschner log, Viets Karl, Stretcher Rennie, Rigge Holt, Rigalt Wash Day 26, 17th Bell, I took the notebook page to Confessor Warden Drav at the 17th bell. Not because I expected her to name what I had written. She keeps the faith the way she keeps the blessing schedule, exact, without variance. And she does not deal in the kind of question I was bringing. I went because I had run out of people on this platform who would look at a page and not fold it shut again. 20 years on these rigs teaches you that. When a man keeps a log, he is not asking for answers. He is making the fact of a thing official. Someone has to hold the record. She was in the Pilgrim Records room off the main blessing hall, the room that smells of pressed seal and paper softening in the condensate air, and below that, always, the brine off the hull surfaces that does not leave. She did not invite me to sit. I put the page open on the desk in front of her and stepped back. Gap in text. Approx. 3 lines. Ink obliterated by water contact. Document appears damp-sealed and opened again. Damage predates this review. When she looked up, the color had gone out of her throat. Not her face. Her face is a trained surface and it held, but below the jaw there was a pallor that had nothing to do with the porthole great light. She asked me where I had written these shapes. Gamma 3. Day 21. Off the lip of the drawshaft, after the bucket came up wrong. She asked if anyone else had been present. No. She put one finger near the page, not touching the shapes, but close to them. The way you test an iron plate, you have reason to distrust before you lay your skin on it. Her lips moved without sound, working through something in the private register she does not share aloud. Then she said, the 5th and 9th shapes taken together resolved to a name. Not High Gothic. Not any pilgrim tongue I have heard in 20 years on this corridor. Lectish devotional shorthand. The notation confessors use when a pilgrim does not return to the transit lot. Solon Mast. I wrote that down. My hand is usually steady. This entry will show that it was not. She said the 3rd shape is a direction. She would not state it plainly. She said in the old liturgy of descent, the forms used before the current ministorum rites standardize the Suvash corridor blessing. This mark indicates the lower register, below the visible atmospheric band. In the context of Olvath Major, she rendered it as downward, into the bands. I did not write that immediately. I stood with the iron augmetic cooling the way it does when the temperature drops in the record rooms. It reads cold a little before the rest of me does, and I heard the tether compressions thrum through the far wall, and I thought, he has sent us a direction. The message includes a location. Then I asked to see the pilgrim roll. Drav set her hands flat on the desk. Not refusal. Closer to bracing, the way a man sets his feet before he lifts something he has correctly estimated the weight of. But she pulled it. I read the entries alongside her. I laid the dates out the way you lay out components after a system failure, trying to find where the break sits. Mast departed transit lock 7, day 16. The face appeared at Gamma 3, day 19. My entry, 14th bell, confirmed without coordination by Chalk's anomaly notation in the maintenance log, same bell. Same station, neither of us having spoken to the other. Mast's body recovered from the lower galleries, day 22. I held those numbers. 3 days between departure and first signal. 3 days between first signal and confirmed death. The face surfaced at the exact midpoint. I thought of the rope creak from day 21 taut, slack, taut, 3 beats before the bucket cleared the shaft. The same interval, given in sound first, as a throat clears before speech. The message is coming from the interval. I wrote that in the margin and underlined it once. Drav looked at what I had written and said nothing. From her, silence on a recorded fact functions the same as a countersignature. I asked what the faith calls a man who is departed and is not yet confirmed dead and is sending signal through the condensate wells. She said, there is no such entry in the roll. She took the page from me, I let her, and noted in the margin that I had relinquished it. She held it for a long time while I stood in the brine sweet air, and the tether compressions went on thumping through the hull. And below us somewhere, the pilgrim livestock shifted in the transit pens, restless the way they go in the low bell hours when the platforms settle. When I left, the breviary was open on her desk, the seal press uncapped beside it. She had the look of a woman selecting which words to change in a rite she has already performed once to poor result. The press was warm when she set it down. She had used it once before I arrived, on a page she turned face down before I could read it. Whatever she is preparing for Gamma 3, she has already begun it in writing. Fan Breviary of Confessor Warden Austri Drab Entry, Day 27, Platform Suvash Prime Well Station Gamma 3, 14th bell to 16th bell, witnessed and attested in full. The ritual proceeds in prescribed form. I record it completely, as the Ministorum requires of all field rites conducted outside a consecrated nave. The oil, drawn from the reserve censer in my quarters, 63 drams measured by the graduated vessel I carry for field consecrations. 40 applied to the rope in 3 passes, forward stroke, reverse stroke, forward stroke, the litany of physical sanctification spoken across each pass without pause. The remainder divided. 19 drams to the shaft lip in full circuit. 4 held in the vessel as surety against reapplication. No excess. No shortfall. The saint invoked, Estevan the Closed, keeper of sealed waters, in common form. In High Gothic, as given in the Ministorum Compendium of Field Saints, Volume the 3rd, Entry 42nd, Sanctus Acevenus Clausata Dominus Acarum Obsignaterum. Both forms spoken. Both forms complete. The litany, in full as spoken by the seal of Estevan the Closed, let this water be bounded. By the authority vested in this office by his holy Ministorum, let that which passes upward through this shaft be only that which the Emperor's light permits. The depths are his depths. The surface is his surface. That which lies between is his domain. Nothing passes that he has not willed. Nothing speaks that he has not sanctioned. Let the interval between above and below be closed and sealed and silent and empty of all motion that is not his motion, and all voice that is not his voice, and all face that is not. Second notation, written at smaller scale, the characters pressed unevenly. The pen not entirely steady. The water did not respond as the rite prescribes. The oil dispersed correctly on the rope. The lip circuit held its form. I completed the litany without error of syllable or sequence. I have performed this rite 17 times during my tenure at Suvash. On each previous occasion the draw water settled flat after the final benediction, a visible terminus, a visible acceptance, which the compendium describes as surface quiescence, and records as the rite's confirmation of efficacy. The surface did not settle. The surface did not change. I waited the full prescribed interval, 12 seconds, and the water continued its motion in the shaft, not as disturbed water moves. As water moved from below, against the direction of surface pressure, against the direction of gravity and condensate flow, and everything I have been taught about what water does when left to itself. I administered the supplementary litany of Saint Therese, which is not prescribed but which I have applied in stubborn cases when the first rite has not taken, and the water continued to move. And I, third notation, characters barely legible. The pen has broken the paper's upper fibers in several places. The impressions show through to the reverse side. Written last. Taut. Slack. Taut. I had not touched the rope. The bucket was fully raised. There was no weight in the shaft to produce tension, no returning slack to produce release, no second mass to pull it taut again. The creak preceded my first word of the litany by 4 seconds. I counted them. I was counting because I had already heard it and I needed something to count. I do not record this as metaphor. I am confessor warden of this halt, and my testimony carries the weight and seal of this office, and I am recording what I heard and when I heard it, and in what sequence it arrived. The rope was still. Then it was not still. Then I heard what the water was doing, and the litany stopped. Not because I stopped speaking, but because the words left before I could push them out. I've never had that happen. In 21 years of field ministry, through 3 transit corridor postings and 1 plague ship clearance, and 1 action I am not at liberty to name, the words have never left before I could use them. I sealed the station. I walked to my quarters. I sat for some time. If the coalman asks whether the rite took, no. If he asks whether I will attempt it again, no. If he asks why, I will tell him that a rite of sealing is a petition, that a petition requires a party capable of receiving it, that something in well station Gamma 3 heard the litany of physical sanctification and creaked 3 seconds before I finished speaking it, and in that creak answered. I do not know what the answer was. I know it was not compliance. I know it was not silence. And I know now, which I did not know this morning, that whatever is in Gamma 3 has been aware of us for longer than we have been aware of it. I am writing this by the light of the shorty vessel oil. It is burning very low. I had not noticed how much time had passed. Overharge fragment transcription. Originating location, Maintenance Trench 7, Platform Link Passage, Gamma Deck West Approach. Transcribed by V. Call, Stretcher Runner, Rig Halt Suvash Witnessed, Day 31, 9th Bell, 10th Bell. Parties, Unidentified, Rig Workers, Maintenance Grade. I did not approach for names and they did not offer them. I was coming back through with the empty litter. Second circuit of the bell cycle, when I heard them in the junction cut ahead. The trench narrows there, hull iron on both sides within arm's reach, and sound travels forward through it cleanly without scatter. I stopped at the bend. The litter frame was over my right shoulder, and I put the iron arm against the left wall to steady myself. The augmetic was cold in a way the surrounding air was not. I did not announce my presence. When a conversation has already reached its critical depth, the addition of a third voice changes nothing useful. The first man was not raising his voice. That was the first thing I marked. He had the register I have learned to recognize in 20 years on this corridor, not fear, but the adjacent condition. The state present in a man who has passed through fear and come out the other side into something that does not yet have a common name. He was saying the bucket from Gamma 5 came up wrong at the 16th bell 2 days prior. Day 29. He said it came up wrong. He said faces. Plural. Not face. not reflection. He said they were looking outward, and when the second man spoke over him, he repeated it with the same flat pressure, not floating, not still, not caught on the surface the way condensate ice catches things. Looking outward, oriented toward the bucket's lip, toward the rig side of the water's surface. And as he raised the bucket, they moved with the raise, not a static impression held in the drawer, but a tracking. The way a man's eyes will follow movement even when the rest of him has stopped. He could not give account. He looked past two and started toward the third and ceased looking. He did not explain why he stopped. He did not need to. The second man cited the Overseer Tertius contamination record. He actually cited it, Gamma 3, Day 19, bacterial bloom or nitrogen ice optical distortion. The entry that is sat open without resolution since the 14th bell of that day, now 12 days past. He said if Gamma 5 is showing the same, the record gets updated. He said that was what the record was for. He said the Confessor Warden had performed the well right on the 27th, and the matter was addressed. The first man said, she did the right. He said nothing more. A pause in which the compressors ran, and the hull condensate moved down the weld seams in its established way. And the brine smell off the junction cut was unchanged, everything behaving as it should and always has. The second man said, then it is done. The first man said, you want to pull the next draw from Gamma 5. Go. He was not threatening him. His voice held throughout, the flat pressure. That hull revit register that I have learned means the load is already past the rated tolerance. He was making an offer. I understood from his tone that he himself would not be pulling another draw from Gamma 5. The second man said something low below the compressor cycle, and the sound lost its shape before it reached me. Then one set of boots in the passage, moving hard toward the transit bay approach, the walk of a man who has recalled somewhere else he is required to be. I held my position another half bell before I moved into the junction cut. The first man was still there. He had his back to the trench passage and was looking at the whole wall, condensate in lines along the welds, nothing there. Unchanged since the rig was first riveted together above Orvith Major's upper band. He did not turn when I came through. I did not speak to him. I looked at his hands. They were not shaking. They were entirely still, which is its own category of information. I have logged this under transcription and not direct observation, because that distinction is what the log is for. I try to be exact about the difference between what I saw and what I was told. His voice was flat, margin, added after the main entry, heavier pen pressure, different angle, written standing or near it, second station showing. 4 days since the Confessor Warden spoke the right and recorded that the rope creaked before she could begin. I have been carrying something in the iron arm since the 29th. Not a sound, or, not only, a frequency beneath the compressor note that I felt in the augmetic before I understood I was hearing it at all. I have not written this until now. I did not want to have written it. Personal log. Vit Sequel, Stretcher Run Air Rig Halt Suvash. Day 33, second bell onward. The augmetic knew before I did. That is the honest entry. Not, I heard a sound. Not, something woke me at the second bell. The iron from the elbow down went cold, colder than the deck plate, colder than the condensate sheeting the bulkhead above my bunk. A cold that arrived as pressure rather than temperature, a thing the metal registered and my skin could not. I lay there through 2 full cycles of the bell. then I understood it was not going to stop. I have called it the Winter Siren in my notes because I cannot name it any other way. It is not a sound the rig makes. I know what the rig makes. I have spent 20 years in its maintenance trenches listening to it breathe and grind and complain. And everything it produces has a source and a frequency and a fix or a workaround. This has none of those things. It arrives cold and does not resolve into anything and continues without pause, as though it has always been continuing and the rig simply became audible to it. I pulled on my coverall, took the probe rod and the audio loop gauge I used to diagnose hull resonance in secondary struts, and walked the condensate gallery from junction 4 to junction 9 before I understood what I was hearing. It is in the shafts. Not gamma 3. All of them. I placed the gauge against each shaft cap in sequence, gamma 1 through gamma 7, then the 4 beta series shafts on platform 3, then the 2 alpha series on platform 1 that no one has serviced since before I posted here. All of them reading the same low signature, below the threshold of unaided hearing in most people, the gauge tells me. Except that my augmetic is not unaided hearing, and I can feel it in the bone join where the iron meets what remains of my upper arm. Not painful. That is possibly the detail I find most difficult to record without the pen stopping. The shafts are not vibrating. The frequency is inside the water column, moving upward through the condensate from whatever draws the condensate down. It is not the rig speaking. It is something speaking through the rig's water. I do not write that confidently. I write it because it is what the gauge says and because I have no other category. Spent an hour in Gamma 3's access corridor at the low bell watching the shaft cap. The rope was still. Then taut, slack, taut, 3 beats, no bucket moving, no hand on the rope above. Then nothing. I was not the only one there. 3 pilgrims from the lower gallery transit bays had come to the shaft without lights. Eyes open. Faces directed toward the shaft cap as though the shaft were a speaker and they were waiting for the next word. One was a woman I recognized from the transit rolls, bound for the corridor's far station. She had her hands pressed flat against the shaft cap housing. She was not moving. She was oriented. That is the only word. The way a compass needle is oriented, not drawn against its will, simply fulfilling the condition that has always applied to it, as though the direction had already been given to her and she was only now acting on it. She looked patient. She looked like someone who has been told where she is going and has accepted the distance. I left without speaking to them. I do not know if that was correct. Drav's exorcism addressed the water in Gamma 3. The water in all the shafts is the same water, condensate, drawn through the same atmospheric gradients, pulling from the same gas bands of Orveth Major below us. The right addressed one aperture. The aperture was never the point. Wrote up a request for Chelk's office. Formal notation that the audio loop gauge reads anomalous frequencies in all condensate shafts. Recommend immediate shutdown of atmospheric draw across all platforms pending source identification. Have not sent it. His last 6 pages are gone, torn clean from the binding, and his subsequent entries record nothing about any of this. I do not know who would receive it. I do not know who, having received it, would understand what they were holding. The old metic has not warmed since I woke. The sound continues. The pilgrims came last night as well. I was not there to watch, but there were fresh hand marks on Gamma 5 shaft cap housing this morning, and the dust on the lip of Gamma 7 was disturbed in the pattern I now recognize. Reaching upward from below, I had begun checking the well stations at each bell rather than each watch. The distances between them are not long. I know every maintenance trench on this hull, every sound it makes and several it should not. I am telling myself that is worth something. I am less certain of this than I was on day 31. His voice was flat. I wrote then about Merrick in the trench, meaning he had moved past the range where fear still moves. I did not note that my own handwriting that day was smaller than usual. Pressed close to the margin, Doc Doom and Reg Avert, exterior face, sealed door, well station Gamma 3. Date of recovery, unrecorded. Held by, no office has claimed this filing. Day 44. Physical condition at time of transcription, moisture swollen oilskin grade paper, single fold, compression rivet driven by hand through upper margin into door timber. Cold on recovery. Condensate ring pattern on door surface indicates placement prior to the 14th bell. No name on either face. No seal. Not countersigned. Not requested. The 12 shapes on the upper portion of the document are in the hand of Veth Call, stretcher runner, Righolt Suvash. Comparison made against his personal log, pages 1 through 33, held in this collection. The letter form compressions are identical. The phonetic shorthand schema matches the day 21 entry precisely. The 7th and 9th characters carry his characteristic left lean. The match is not approximate. He last made a log entry on day 33. Between each of the 12 shapes, a new line has been inserted. 11 interpolated lines in total. These lines are not in Veth Call's hand. No exemplar has been located for comparison. The unknown hand is consistent with itself across all 11 lines. The pen pressure is regular in a way that does not correspond to fatigue or cold. The lines were not written quickly. Transcription, Roman approximation throughout. Phonetic notation preserved for Call's shapes. Shape 1. Carl hand, Solin, Inten Paula line, Inten third Paula line. Unninty nor hand. I was in the water before the bucket came down. I was in the water before the shaft was drilled. You heard correctly. Shape 2, coal hand, mast, interpolated line, a nutty nor hand. That is one name. The interval collects them. There are others in the bands. Shape 3, coal hand, velor, Benti, interfolati, interfolatidlin, a nonter hand. The woman with the oil did not close the mouth of it. She sealed the door. These are not the same thing. Shape 4, cal hand, under, interpolatalated line, interforpalated line, a nuniwa hand. He came down on day 37. He brought the log. I did not call him. He followed the rope, and the rope did not resist him. Shape 5, cool hand, bursith, interpoladed line. Unignor hand, tell the one with the iron arm, the sound in the iron is not the Winter Siren. The Winter Siren is what the iron has begun to say. Ha ha. Shape 6, 12th 9. Call hand, phonetic notation preserved. Not rendered here. Interpolated line is 6:09. Unnanti nur. Hand the original document folded at this point. Crease damage renders 2 lines partially illegible. Transcription resumes where legible. Nington Paula dated line 8, partial. The shaft is not a shaft at this depth. The condensate is shape 10, Carl hand, or Veth, entered Paula did line. Ananor, hand. Now you have the name of the thing you are suspended above. Shape 11, cool hand, Veldra, enter Paula line. Unnaughtier, hand. The direction is the same. It has always been the same. You drew it up. You are drawing it still. Shape 12, Cal hand, tar, mark, not character. Unnaughty nor hand. Do not send another one to the door. Margin notation, right face of document, running perpendicular to primary text, base to head. 3 scored marks pressed into the oilskin grain without puncturing. The paper is compressed, not cut. The marks run deep, shallow deep. No ink. No graphite. No pigment of any kind. Consistent with sustained pressure from a narrow implement or a fingernail held flat. Doc. Personal log. Viet Cal. Stretcher runner. Righalt Suvash. Day 44. No entry. The log runs to page 44. Pages 44 through end of binding, blank. No pages have been removed. The binding is intact. The oilskin cover shows condensate darkening consistent with lower Guru humidity readings from day 33 through day 36. From day 37, no new marking. The notebook was not carried after that date. Final notation, no signatory, no date. Written in the unknown hand on the inside back cover of the Gamma 3 collection binder, this is the last entry in this collection. It was not requested. No one asked for it to be filed here. File it anyway. The rope is still down.